Hello, and a lukewarm welcome back to the fragmented saga of cantankerous text-splaining that has beset Spectroactive. Can resolute anti-Appleite Henry Halsworth apply his wealth of non-fruit-based wisdom to best a bona fide Mac Pro? Let's find out. Thank you so much. Let's commence with the Captain's Console. I've never been a fan of chiclet-style typewriters, but if our questioner can't function without Apple's aesthetics, then the Microsoft Modern Keyboard is indeed the closest reproduction of a Mac's magic motion. But of course, that's without the randomly repeated or missing characters. I think you'll find that issue was limited to certain MacBooks incorporating Apple's butterfly mechanism. It had nothing to do with the Magic Keyboard. But it was a problem that Apple resisted acknowledging for 3 years. They acknowledged and corrected individual cases. It just didn't rise to a level that warranted an official repair program until much later. Right after a class action lawsuit was filed. Look, every company suffers post-launch product snags, but the recognition and remedy of an endemic fault depends wholly on the percentage of those affected. Apple just didn't mobilize a special service until enough cases were reported. Why don't you try telling that to the MacBook owners who were charged $500 for their fixes before the program was instigated? I note that you don't cite any particular instances, but I'm sure recompense would be available for those buyers too. You make it all sound so agreeable, Colin. Kinda makes you wonder why anyone bothered pursuing a class action, right? Not to mention why Apple contested it so vigorously. The lawsuit alleged that Apple willfully concealed what they were aware was an inherent engineering flaw whilst continuing to sell retail units that weren't fit for purpose. There's no proof of that. Oh, other than them sneaking out a revised third-gen design in 2018 on the dubious pretext that it provided a quieter typing experience before reverting to conventional scissor switches in the same product a year later. Updating your design does not constitute the acceptance of or liability for an innate defect.
Congratulations, Colin. Your defense is right out of the NBC Courtroom Drama Handbook.
And it's the last fan-person flame war I'm tolerating. Henry, back to your hack, please. I need no flames when facts are on my side. But time isn't. Now move it. As you wish. Personally, I think retro rules when it comes to input devices, and almost everything since the IBM Model M has been a masterclass in wheel reinvention, so if by chance he can persuade himself to supplant the cosmetic with the constructive, then there's a contemporary tribute to that ageless classic in the form of this inspired homage from Unicomp. They're a boutique business made up of ex-IBM employees who cannily acquired the rights to all of the crucial mechanical patents. It costs the same as the Microsoft, so the full quote is unaffected. 2 minutes, Henry. We'll see. No qualms about the mouse. Logitech anywhere, anytime, anyplace for the win. Case closed as far as the Be Quiet Dark Pro 2 is concerned, although I'm a staunch advocate of practical exhibitionism, and the Demastech Easy XL will put paid to any potential thermal impediments whilst being far less of an eyesore than any half-baked test chassis. It also leaves another 100 in hand. 2 minutes, Henry. Let's turn to Cooler Master to temper our processor. Their Threadripper dual heatsink boasts a 7-pipe design and is one of a select group of officially endorsed air-based dissipators for the TR40 platform. No bargain at $230, but no leaks either. You're leaking precious seconds. Power supply, let's see, 1.6 kilowatts is more than what allows me to toast bread and brew coffee in the morning. Nonetheless, spare amperage never goes amiss in a creator's workstation, so I won't stray from Waldo's highly future-proof EVGA Supernova. Moving on to vibrant visuals, I'd rank Laurie's Asus above Waldo's Dell. Both monitors have their fortes, but the former is frankly a generation ahead with full-array local dimming, superior color gamut coverage, and complete support for all emergent embodiments of HDR. To populate its Megazone panel, I've plumped for brand consistency over raw pace with dual Radeon Vega 7s, Whilst technically an end-of-life product, AMD's driver support remains comprehensive, and the card is something of a sought relic amongst folks who believe the evil green eye will eternally sully their souls.
Wow, that's almost worthy of J.K. Rowling fanfiction.
It's also a close cousin of the Mac Pro's prohibitively repackaged Radeon Pro Vega 2, sporting the exact same Vega 20 GPU, but with a peak core clock bonus of 100 MHz, identical second-gen high-bandwidth memory running at a faster frequency along a bus every bit as wide, not to mention more than comparable compute credentials, including a maximum double precision speed 4 times higher, a stat conveniently omitted from both Apple's and AMD's websites to stifle the notion that it outranks an over-stylized rehash for roughly 75% less dough.
Conspiracy theory number... Oh, excuse me, I've lost count. But it's gotta be bordering on some sort of tech show record.
In fact, Colin, you can stash a pair of these Lucky Red 7s for under 1/4 of what you've shoved in your pride and joy, and on top enjoy significantly improved gaming performance.
But with only half the video RAM.
Detrimental in an infinitely small number of scenarios, none of them remotely relevant here. I'm about to pull the plug. Then we better not dwell on storage. Twin Samsung 970 EVO Pluses fit the bill just fine. Now for the juicy stuff, memory. To ECC or not to ECC? That is indeed the question every Mac Pro customer is denied the right to ponder, since not to ECC is to sleep. Permanently. Fortunately for us orchard outcasts, freedom of choice is not a pip dream, and the TRX 40 chipset at the heart of my yet-to-be-divulged motherboard welcomes a vastly wider selection of DIMMs, but in contrast to Intel's C621, its RAM controller is quad-channel, so you'll need 8 32GB sticks to reach its capacity of 256, which we'd be foolish not to do with a blank check. So far, we've examined 2 16GB ACC parts from Crucial with frequencies of 2666 and 2933 MHz. There's no reason why their 32GB variants wouldn't work without a hitch despite their absence on the manufacturer's qualified vendor list, but neither attains the chipset's JEDEC-approved max frequency, so... JEDEC?
They're an independent, committee-driven global organization responsible for evolving and regulating universally applicable standards and specifications within the microelectronics industry. To chip fabricators, they're what the FIA are to motor racing, or FIFA to soccer.
Or the FTC to any company in credit.
By which you mean Apple, or Amazon, or all the small-time sellers who lost their businesses because Amazon and Apple bullied them out of the marketplace?
That deal was inevitable. The market was getting saturated with defective third-party knockoffs. Apple interfacing their store with Amazon was the most efficient way to ensure customers received precisely what they were paying for.
And would instantly pay triple for. Anyway, the last time I checked, there were still plenty of cheap alt-branded accessories available. Not much sign of third-party refurbs, though.
Independent traders can still sell, they just have to be authorized by Apple.
Who casually inform them that they can't unless they invest a quarterly minimum of $2.5 million to acquire goods from retailers whose sales revenue exceeds $5 billion a year. Do you think it's a coincidence that so many used products still sold by Apple just happen to be solely available through Amazon's warehouse?
Henry, I think you may have a partner in crime.
No, just arguing that the FTC does have merits, and the longevity of yesterday's trends should be a priority for corporations who claim to recycle responsibly.
Notwithstanding all that, I must remember to categorize this video as not made for kids. Henry, proceed. Right, on the memory front, neither Crucial module hits the TRX 40's top JEDEC certified speed, so I'd cautiously suggest taking your chances with all that mission-critical medical research and opting instead for this non-ECC Corsair kit, 8 sticks rated at 3200 MHz, and guaranteed to operate as a group with, I suspect, abundant scope for optimization. Again, it's not on Gigabyte's QVL, but with Corsair explicitly stating that it's compatible with all present HEDT platforms, I'd be surprised if anybody suffers instabilities. Ah, so it's a Gigabyte motherboard you've chosen, is it? Very perceptive, it sure is. Meet the Designair TRX40. Intriguing. A Gigabyte board, Corsair memory, and Asus monitor. I'd say Waldo and Laurie have a pretty solid case for plagiarism. Pardon, but I think you'll find my pitch predates theirs. Only somebody forced me to wait till last. True, and no doubt you would have spec'd all four given the chance. Now tell me, why Gigabyte yet again for the motherboard? And furthermore, why specifically the Designair model? Are they sending you all review samples? Because, having intensively scrutinized 3 homegrown alternatives along with a showcase of spectacular circuitry from the hallowed halls of sworn rivals, none of whom, to be candid, have furnished me with review units, the Designair provides by far the richest functionality at the most attractive price. Permission to expound, but not an awful lot. Much obliged. In terms of integration and engineering, it's a qualitative match for the likes of Asus's ROG Zenith 2 Extreme, MSI's Creator TRX40, or indeed Gigabyte's very own hyper-flagship TRX40 Aorus Extreme. It harbors dual 8-pin power connectors for the processor combined with the same 16-phase distribution via equally durable VRMs. It's decked out with 4 internal USB headers, 2 2.0 and 2 3.2, 4 full-length quad-gen PCI Express slots appointed as 2 pairs served respectively with 16 and 8 lanes, along with a handy bonus single-lane slot. Given that each of these links delivers double the bandwidth of the protocol's predecessor, that's a healthy supplement of 2 gigabytes or 16 gigabits per second to play with. So perhaps a good place to nestle a 10 gig NIC, which appears to be the only feature it skimps on next to its costlier contemporaries. All the rest is down to swanky cosmetics, fancy lighting, and lavish PCB shielding, none of which serves to enhance productivity. So, what do they enhance?
Debt.
Well, Colin's the expert there. But for those who feel unduly deprived, fear not, for you're rewarded with 2 luxury peripherals. Firstly, the Aorus Gen 4 AIC, which is Gigabyte's contribution to the growing craze of M.2 adapters. As the name suggests, it's a full-length 4th Gen 16-lane card that can house a merry quartet of M.2 Pci-e modules and enables the optimal operation of cutting-edge NVMe drives, and yes, they're considerably faster than what any Mac Pro is packing, T2 chip or otherwise.
Shame they can't assist in video encoding.
I haven't got to the coup de grace yet. The second premium perk is the very same GC Titan Ridge Thunderbolt card that Waldo introduced to us, only here it's bereft of any Thunderbolt branding. The reason being that while Intel retains the sole authority to officially certify all Thunderbolt 3 devices, the underlying technology forms the basis of USB 4.0, which is an open standard. Hence, given the latter's imminent release, Gigabyte shrewdly defended their creation's right to anonymity by shunning Intel's certification fees. The result is this functionally identical enigma that, for some reason, isn't bundled with any of the designer's 3 stablemates, even though the requisite header is present on all 4 motherboards, though in keeping with its canny workaround, Gigabyte rechristened it the add-in card connector. So USB 4 equals Thunderbolt 3? In all but name, essentially yes. Same transfer rate, same reversible Type-C interface. And you're saying this curious anonymous card performs identically to its Thunderbolt-certified twin partnered with an Intel chipset? That's correct, with similarly unofficial drivers. Have you tested it? No, but it has been successfully utilized to drive Apple's XDR display in a system that used the Aorus Extreme, which, as you'll recall, is this motherboard's opulent sibling. Sounds pretty decisive. Now, you've got exactly 64 seconds to wrap this up. How appropriate, then, that my Mac murderer's metaphorical coup de grace should feature no fewer than 64 cores. if there remained one sliver of ambiguity over whether Apple's gratuity tariffs were justified, the Ryzen Threadripper 3990X surgically shreds it into silicon oblivion, almost half the price of the Mac Pro's top option, and, according to every noteworthy source, the supreme slayer of Cinebench, the undisputed blitzer of Blender, and chart-topping productivity performance.
Not necessarily. In video encoding, it's barely on a par with Intel's highest-end desktop chips, and it frequently trails the Xeon Ws in 3D rendering, and that's before we factor in the Mac Pro's T2 chip and Afterburner accelerator.
Let's get this straight. Where it falls short, it's by a hair's breadth. Where it pulls ahead, it's in another dimension. Furthermore, its minor flaws stem from the fact that most software coders haven't found a way to comprehensively harness 64 cores yet. But as programming techniques and applications evolve, the tables are bound to turn.
By which time we'll be another 2 eras down the roadmap with a shed load of fresh fabs to choose from. It's exactly like Threadripper 2, a whole load of horsepower for a whole lot of wheel spin. If staring at synthetic benchmarks, salivating over meaningless scores, and dreaming of the speed you might have if only programmers would rack their brains, then be my guest. Just go right ahead and watch those threads flap uselessly in the breeze.
The bitter rhetoric of a sour loser. AMD are set to become the heart and soul of every coveted workstation, and Threadripper 3 is already the proactive creator's ultimate weapon of choice. It's a renderer's blessing, it's a developer's fantasy, and, on topic, a videographer's single-chip production suite. It crunches more numbers than NASDAQ during a double-dip recession, it chews chunks out of every progress bar, streamlines workflows 6 ways from Sunday, giving you more Saturdays to sit in the coffee shop opposite your local Apple store and laugh your face off, and the platform that propels it is an entire PCI revision ahead of your Mac Pro's crumbling foundations. In terms of expandability and future-proofing, it is at least a unanimous points decision, and I haven't even got to the price yet.
Funny how an Apple versus PC battle can become an Intel versus AMD war within the space of one component.
By the time we're done here, AMD could well be dominating the server market with EPYC and the portable market with Ryzen Mobile, leaving Apple no option but to abandon the Blue Baron for carbon-neutral Crimson Skies. And if that happens, just watch how quickly Colin starts singing the Red Army's praises. At least my views are founded on facts and not fandom. Colin, do you wish to respond? Colin? Colin? What's the matter? Is he frozen or just run out of apple juice? It's tough to tell. His expression hasn't changed in the last half hour. No matter, just get to the quote, will you? Your time expired several light years ago. With the greatest of pleasure. When incorporating all parts discussed, the total cost of our Mega Ultra Hyper Hackintosh Extreme is precisely $12,580, thus saving you a shade over $11,000 compared to a genuine Mac Pro, even with self-installed memory and a half-decent third-party monitor, which, incidentally, is enough to finance a complete secondary system using the exact same components, but substituting the processor for a 3970X, which many have claimed to be the sweet spot of the Threadripper 3 lineage. Salutations, Henry, and now it's time...
I can knock another $4,000 off that. Want to hear how?
How fast can you...
Swap the Gigabyte TRX40 motherboard for an MSI X570 godlike gaming. It may be marginally less rich in resources, but as Henry said, since PCIe 4.0 transmits twice the data of 3.0, a capacity of 20 lanes equates to 40 on any current Intel platform. That's plenty of bandwidth to serve its 4 full-length slots, which auto-config to either a single 16-lane, 2 8-lane, or 1 8+2 4-lane according to occupancy, with the bottom slot always active and fixed at 4.
Can I...
No slacking on the quality front. There's solid-state caps, heavy-duty voltage regs, 14-phase power delivery, and the PCB is stacked with a cornucopia of connectivity, including 5 USB 3.2 Gen 2 sockets, 3 Type-A, and 1 Type-C on the rear I.O., with a second Type-C header on the board, a pair of Ethernet ports, the first 1 gigabit, its neighbor 2.5.
Right. And that's all...
Then we have built-in 6th Gen Wi-Fi with support for Bluetooth 5 and a trio of quad-lane 4th Gen M.2 Pci-e slots with dedicated passive heat sinks. Use 2 of these to host our ubiquitous Evo twins. On top of that, there's a bumper pack of deluxe steel sweeteners comprising MSI's SuperLAN 10 gig network adapter alongside their dual-port M.2 Pci-e expander adding card. Installing the latter allows hosting a maximum of 5 4-lane NVMe SSDs when combined with the board's triple integrated sockets, but it only functions in slot 3, so to reap its benefits you'll have to forfeit SLI and live with a solitary graphics card. Assuming you'd rather not, then bag the same tag team of 2080 Supers as my Intel pitch, along with the same power supply, case, mouse, and keyboard.
Yes, and there we have it, folks.
Ditch the Asus monitor for an Acer Predator X27P. Sure, it might not be a Hollywood editor's holy grail, but 1,000 nits of peak illumination and almost 400 local dimming zones should satisfy any budding videographer working with HDR source material, and color gamut coverage for DCI-P3 and Rec 2020 is more than adequate for anybody with less than 40/40 vision. I mean, come on, it just is. It's also a hardware G-Sync panel with a max refresh rate of 144 Hz at UHD, so perfect for game developers or freelance creators unable to resist the occasional Doom deathmatch.
Wait, we've really got to...
Pull the trigger on this Corsair Vengeance RAM, 64 gigs in a verified pack of 4 rated at the chipset's top native frequency. Replace the Threadripper cooler with the Noctua D15 SC AM4, and lastly, drop it on top of a Ryzen 9 3950X. Because as far as I'm concerned, this processor has no peer in the value stakes, and while 16 cores might seem scant next to 32 or 64, when you consider you're consuming almost 180 watts less under full load, that translates into a sizable recompense on your energy bill.
Laurie, please, can we...
It keeps a cool head even when maxed out by the most demanding applications, and if it's genuinely not fast enough to meet your career deadlines or encode your insufferably self-righteous life coaching videos, then I discreetly recommend that you ask your legions of clients to kindly wait another day or take a hike. Having blown a scant $6,980, you'll have stashed over $16,000 by avoiding a top-spec Mac Pro, which has got to be enough to risk losing the odd commission for. Would have probably been a trash wedding anyway.
Well, Robbie McLean, virtuoso videographer from Salem in Oregon. Assuming you're still listening, or indeed haven't moved states, your request for the recipe to a definitive Mac mimic has finally been fulfilled. By means of Spectroactive's fathomless sagacity, you now possess the blueprints to 4 fabulous top-tier Hackintoshes, as formulated by our panel of uniquely persuasive swivel chair pundits. From the Honourable Dr. Hayward to Intel's incorrigible insiders, a delectable desktop of immense speed and prodigious versatility, caffeinated to the cause by lakes of refreshing fair trade coffee and primed to scale record-smashing frequencies. The ferocious frame-shredding knight of i9s. And, from the otherwise occupied Waldo A. Oakley, a sumptuous workstation fit for a king's ransom and capable of multitasking beyond magisterial magnificence. A monstrous Mac Pro nemesis lasered from the very sane wafer in the deepest, darkest depths of Cascade Lake. General Franken-Xeon. Third, and for those with a penchant for rosier pastures, Dr. Hayward proudly presents an AMD-fueled Uber rig of exceptional efficiency and sufficient core strength to cripple all but the mightiest Macintoshes. Zen 2's sensation, Queen Ryzen Matisse. And last, but as far from least as illogically conceivable, Henry Halsworth's hyper-heavyweight hive of productivity, apt to render black holes in the very fabric of infinity, the colossal king of Castle Peak, Baron von Threadripper III. And please, lest ye not forsake indefatigable apologist Colin Laundrie's catalogue of viable excuses to shun everyone and instead become a fully made member of the New World Orchard.
And not get whacked by Windows.
Shut up, Colin. And I regret there we really must cease. But not before I talk about Apex Evolve, a class-leading solution in dedicated analytics. Watch your website-based business thrive and expand with a compendium of finely customizable granular algorithms devised to monitor and interpret your customer base and financial infrastructure, ensuring you're extracting the best from your company and clientele. Observe your margins and projections from the perfect vantage point, extract the information you need to execute progressive corporate strategies and make intuitive marketing decisions. Take complete control of your data and increase your profits using a tailored portfolio of enterprise-grade software tools endorsed by over 500 globally established entrepreneurs. I've never met one, I've never used these tools, I've no clue what they are, what they're for, if they work, or what any of this garbage I just read even means, and frankly, Apex Evolve And that concludes this, the final episode in this quandary-inducing quadrilogy of Spectroactive. If by chance you have viewed it out of sequence, as so many may have been conditioned to do by virtue of the film industry's perpetual penchant for prequels, feel free to consult Gigadenz's clinically curated playlists, or allow your cursor to wander over to the right-hand margin and pray that Google's algorithms are in fine form. Whatever timeline, galaxy, or multiverse you presently reside in, it is this weary creator's earnest wish that you garner solace, wisdom, and some semblance of amusement from observing how privileged post-millennial humanity could transform enviable luxuries and abundant choice into a charade of tawdry brand touting, futile text-splaining, and excruciatingly palpable passive-aggressiveness. Should supreme good fortune have embodied my desires, please consider supporting me by smiling and breathing.